Well, this package just arrived today. It's my last piece of safety equipment for my KTM 390 Adventure sitting in the back of the shop here. And it is a bash plate. And so if you want to know why I'm replacing the OEM bash plate and what bash plate that I got and why I'm even upgrading to a newer bash plate, stick around this video and I'll walk you through how to install this bash plate, and I'll give you all my logic behind why I bought this one. Well, I decided to go with the Outback MotorTech bash plate, and I'll tell you the logic behind that in just a minute, but let's see what came inside of the package. I haven't unpacked it yet, so let's do that first. And it looks like it comes, of course, with a bash plate all in one piece. And I'm going to have to open it up inside. It looks like there's all the installation and an empty box. I'm not sure what this empty box is for. Maybe the instructions will tell me. There's nothing in this box. I'm not sure if that's in case I need to return something. I don't know. We'll find out what that box is for. And let's see. Also inside are packing slip, a bunch of stickers, of course. Not much else. So everything else with the bash plate is inside here. Just let me pause this for a second and get a pair of scissors and open this up. Okay, I open it up, and as I said, here's the bash plate, which is pretty good. I think they said it's 4 millimeters, and it's nice and sturdy. It appears to be really well made. The welds look solid, very professionally done. We'll see how it fits and how it looks, but just from looking at it like this, it looks like a sturdy bash plate. It's a little bit off-sized. These two sides aren't equal on their angle. Probably has to do with the fit of the bike rather than poor workmanship, I would think. And the other things that came with it were the mounting brackets to mount it to the frame. I believe it mounts at 4 points on the frame. And then some bunch of nuts and stuff to use with it. What didn't come with it is any instructions. So I am not sure if this was just to hold space. You know, it could be it was just, instead of putting a bunch of plastic bubble wrap, they might have put this in there to keep the bash plate from rattling around. In fact, I think that's probably what they did. But that's a little odd. I've never seen that before done as package stuffing. And as far as instructions, I was online, of course, before I bought this, and they do have a video of instructions. Not really written instructions from what I could see, but I'll dig a little bit more. It didn't appear to be that complex, so let's go ahead and get this thing installed. So why am I replacing the OEM bash plate? Well, the bash plate that comes with a KTM 390 Adventure is made of a piece of plastic, or perhaps it's fiberglass. It has one thin piece of aluminum cover that you can remove when you're changing the oil. The bash plate is not really intended to protect the engine from rocks or boulders or something hard. I think it's only there to protect if you're on a gravel road and don't want your engine to have nicks in it. I was on a ride where I managed to smack into a rock and I put a dent into the metal cover. The plastic bash plate held up and the engine was protected, but I realized right there that I was just lucky and that this bash plate is really just there for decoration and not for any serious protection. When I'm riding off pavement, I mostly stick to dirt and gravel forest roads. Occasionally, I'll get a stretch of steep, rutted, or rocky roads, the occasional log in the road, and other obstacles that I don't want to run into, but that's part of adventure riding. I needed to get a skid plate, bash plate that was going to be able to get me through those situations, and I just didn't feel the OEM plate was up to it. So now you know why I want to change up the skid plate. So why did I go with the Outback MotorTech skid plate? Well, after researching on the internet, I determined there were two types of skid plates for the KTM 390 Adventure. Those that attach to the engine, just like the OEM one does, and those that attach to the frame. Well, I didn't want a skid plate that's going to attach to the engine, because if you hit anything, it's going to impart that force directly onto the engine, perhaps even damaging it. I wanted a skid plate that was going to attach to the frame, so any of the forces from bashing into something would go through the frame and not damage the engine. The skid plates that I found that attach to the frame, I only saw 3 of them there. Leave some comments if you know of others than the 3 that I'm about to mention. One is, of course, the Outback MotorTech one, which I've bought. Another one is from T-Rex Racing, and I had originally purchased that one from T-Rex Racing in part because it's least expensive at $210. When I got it here, I couldn't figure out how to attach it to the bike. There were no instructions that came with it. There was none on their website. So I ended up sending that one back to them, really frustrated as to why they would send it to me with no instructions, nothing on the internet. Now I see on their website that it's not available. So perhaps it never did fit. I'm not sure. So the other than the Outback MotorTech, one that's very popular comes from Black Dog Cycle Works. It's a heavy-duty skid plate just like this one, perhaps a bit more heavy-duty, but I think the difference between the two is so slight. They're both going to provide really good protection should you bash into something. The Black Dog Cycle Works one, I decided not to go with that for 2 reasons. One was it was a lot more expensive, $395 plus shipping plus tax, whereas this is $320. And the other reason was I like the looks of the Outback MotorTech, just the plain matte black finish, and the Black Dog Cycle Works has kind of a different finish that, personally, my own personal opinion, is kind of clashes with the rest of the bike. And I didn't want the bash plate to be the focal point of your view, so that's why I kind of went with the Outback MotorTech. I think it's going to provide sufficient protection. It's going to connect to 4 places on the frame, and its price was a lot cheaper than the only other option out there, which is the Black Dog Cycle Works. So let's go ahead and remove the old OEM bash plate and get this one on. Okay, I've got the bash plate off. As you can see, it's just cheap plastic, and here's the metal covering that goes over the drain for the oil. And yeah, I smacked that pretty good, a couple of spots too, put a big dent in it. And you also have to remove the mounting bracket for the OEM bash plate too. The bash plate comes with 4 mounting locations, 1 at each corner, and it includes 3 brackets. And the 4th bracket is non-existent because it uses a mounting location that's already on the 390. So the first step is to loosely mount the brackets onto the bash plate. The supplied bolts for the brackets include a plastic locking nut, so I don't need to use any Loctite on this part when I mount it. Okay, I mounted the 3 mounting straps and just loosely, as you see. And now I'm going to try to fit that underneath the engine to the mounting points. It might be a little tricky because the bike is on a stand right now, which on the kickstand may be in the way. I may have to figure out some way to balance the bike while I install this. So I'm going to give it a try. The 2 front brackets mount directly onto the crash bars. So I need to remove the nut on the crash bar on both the right and the left side. Comes off relatively easily. And I'll need some Loctite for this when I'm fastening the bracket back onto the crash bar mounting site. Okay, I went back to look at the manufacturer's video, and I only need to attach the 2 front brackets to the skid plate loosely. The 3rd bracket, the one that's on the rear, I actually attach the bracket to the bike first and then attach it later to the skid plate. So I'm using a 10 millimeter bolt that they supply me, and there's a location, see if I can see it. It's right to the left of the engine, and this 10 millimeter bolt fits right in there. So I put some Loctite on it, and I'll go ahead and screw it down. Okay, I got the bracket on this 10 millimeter nut in there. It is really difficult to get to. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to torque it down. The pillion pegs, well, not, I guess that's not the pillion. The pegs are just right in the way, and unless I remove the pegs and the shifter and some of this other apparatus here, I don't know how I'm going to torque that down. But let's just see how it goes. It's on there now loosely, and then I'll mount the other frame points. You might be able to see I've got a little lift here too to help me lift up the bash plate. Since I'm doing this alone, it would take 4 hands otherwise. Near the foot pegs, there's a bracket that's part of the frame of the bike that this little bolt goes in. It's got a hex nut on the front, so I'll install that when I put some Loctite on it. Okay, I was able to install this myself without any help from somebody else because I had the lift that helped me to lift up the bash plate. That worked out really well. Everything's on loose right now, so now I need to tighten it down a little bit at a time and then torque it down. I think the specs are 22 Newton meters for most of the bolts. The little screw in the bottom is I think 9 Newton meters, so I'll do that. I'll see how I can do with this one bolt that I mentioned that's on the right rear side. Not sure how I'm going to get to that to tighten it down. At least I'm not going to be able to torque it down, so I'll just have to do it by hand. The other thing that I also ran into a little problem with is that I got these 2 bolts that came with the installation kit, and I looked at the video, and it seems like they're used on the mounting bracket here in the front on both the right and the left, but there's no way to take the bolts out that's already part of the crash bar. It's kind of part of the bike, so I'm not sure if this was for a bike that has their crash bars. They sell crash bars for the KTM 390, and I think it's a different fit kit for the crash bars that are OEM like mine, or the crash bars that come with the Outback Motortech. So
What I did though is I just took the locking nuts and the washer and I used them to replace the ones that were on the bike since they'll be self-locking as opposed to these which require some Loctite. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything down now, see how that all works out, see if I'm able to torque everything to specs as well.
Well, tightening up the bolt on the rear right side is a little difficult. So I ended up using this 3/8 inch socket with a bendable end, I'm not sure what it's called, articulated, and a 17 millimeter. I could get in there okay and tighten it down. I could use my torque wrench on it too, but I just kind of tightened it as much as felt good. I think what I'll do is with all these, I'll check them later on after a few rides and make sure they're not loosening up. I think they're pretty firm in there though. Shouldn't have any problem with it. But now that I got it on, you know, I think I'll take it out for a test ride and I will give you my final thoughts on this new sturdy bash plate on my 390 Adventure. So now that I've got it mounted, and yeah, I've only done a few miles, nothing rough, it's just a dirt road here. But what are my first impressions of it? Well, the first thing that I noticed when I took off is the sound. It has a definitely louder, more metallic sound than the OEM plastic bash plate. So this one's going to be a little bit noisier. I think it's resonating some of the sound up because it is metal, and metal tends to vibrate with noise, I think, more than the plastic one does. So it's not obnoxious. You probably can't even notice it much right now. Of course, I'm not going very fast, but I'll see what it's like if I just get used to it, which is probably what I will. It's just a different sound, so I'll get used to that. What about the installation? Well, I thought the installation was fairly straightforward, but I kind of wish they had some printed diagrams instead of just a video, because I had to go back and forth to the video multiple times to see that I was installing it with the right mounting brackets. And then I had some leftover parts, which is always an issue. So it wasn't real clear on the video where the leftover bolts went. There were two of them, and they were different than any of the other bolts. The only thing I could think of is that they were to replace the OEM bolts where the engine guards were, but it wasn't real obvious. So I've kept them aside and see if that comes to light of what they're supposed to be for. And I had a difficulty with the one bolt on the lower, on the rear right that hooked up to a member of the frame. And boy, to get in there with any tools was difficult. I was finally able to get to it and tighten it up, but I really wasn't able to use a torque wrench on it. And what are my other thoughts about it? Well, I think there's really only two choices if you want to go to a bash plate that's going to mount to the frame, and that's the Black Dog Cycle Works, their ultimate skid plate, and this one. And I think the Black Dog Cycle Works is probably a superior bash plate. I think it covers more area. And obviously it's $75 more. This one is suitable, I'm sure, for the type of riding that I do, but you might consider the coverage area if you're looking for a bash plate. And the other thing that I noticed, I'm not sure about the Black Dog Cycle Works, but there's no window or gate opening to change the oil.
So when it comes time for oil change, I'm going to have to remove the entire bash plate, change the oil, and put it on again. So that's it's a little bit of a chore. It's not that difficult, but it still is a chore. They didn't put in a opening. That would have cost quite a bit more money. The other aspect that I noticed is there's no drain for water. So if it's raining or I go through water, it's going to collect in the bash plate in the bottom few inches. It's going to sit there. Now there's some drain holes, but they don't go all the way down to the bottom. So at some point I may drill a couple of drain holes in the bottom. I'll see if it's an issue. I don't want to start putting drain holes in if it's not an issue, but I just noticed that could be a problem, especially if it's wet out. So keep that in mind. You'll be toting around some water in the bottom of the bash plate. I think the quality of the build's really good, and the finish. It fit fairly easy, so I didn't have to struggle with anything other than that one bolt on the rear right. Now I'll kind of hold off the part of the review where it's would I buy this again or not, because I've only gone a few miles. So I'll save that for some later time after I've really used it, and maybe after I've actually bashed into something. I do feel good about it in the fact that the only other choices were to get aluminum bash plates that, again, mount to the engine. They might have been better than the OEM plastic one, but still they're going to mount up to the engine. And I'm just real reluctant to hitting something and cracking that engine out in the middle of nowhere. So I wish there were more choices. Like I said, these are the only two that I found. If you know of any others that mount to the frame, let me know in the comments. I might have missed some. Well, it's the middle of May in southern Oregon. We've had an extended winter, and there's still snow on a lot of the roads, and I can tell it's just going to get more. So time for me to turn around and head down to a lower elevation. Well, that's it for installing my skid plate. I think it's going to work out okay, even though I've just had this short little ride. Like I said, I'll fill it in more on some future videos once I smack into something. But anyhow, I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on one of my senior moments.